Hi cherries, it's Jessica here from A Cherry on Top, and welcome to our September YouTube hop. If you haven't been to one of our hops before, each month, at the beginning of the month, we give a $10 gift card to one winner who leaves a comment on this video, along with each of the videos from our design team members. So there's a total of 4 videos for you to hop along, watch, get inspiration from, and leave a comment, and then we'll announce one winner. So I started out this page using a watercolor sheet from Prima, and I wanted to show how I take the pages out of the book because they're glued on both edges. It's very easy if all you do is heat up the edge as you're tearing it off. So that's what you saw me do at the beginning of the video. And then lately I have been liking to back my photos with some chipboard, especially when I'm doing a more mixed media heavy layout or when I know I'm going to have different layers. So here I'm using some florals and different chipboards, and that way my photos stay nice and flat and there are no ripples. How I'm starting my mixed media background is using a Prima stencil and then going in with some Sizzix 3D paste. It's like a texture paste, and I have this going throughout my background. I didn't want it to be like just one area, but kind of so it goes across half of the page diagonally. I wasn't too worried about putting my stencil on top of a place where I just added the paste, even though it was still wet. I wasn't going for a super clean look, but if you are, just let it dry in between your layers, so that way you're not picking up or not mucking up your area. And now I am gluing on some of the chipboard pieces. This is a more floral looking one, and I thought it would go well with my photos. I am gluing it in while my texture paste behind it is still wet, so it really sat in there nicely. When I'm making a layout like this, I like to have all of my elements and more chunky elements all around one corner. I think it makes a really nice focal point for my photos to rest on top of. And now I'm painting some gesso. This is Sizzix gesso over top of the chipboard pieces. This way I can paint on them and the paint will show up nicely because it'll be a white rather than the brownish color, and it makes it so the paint doesn't absorb as much into the chipboard but rather sits on top of it, so it's a more vibrant color. And then I'm also painting these other 2 pieces which came in the pack, which I'll use somewhere on this layout. I've been working on top of a cherry craft mat, which has been my new favorite work surface to work on. Whenever paint dries, I can easily scrape it off with a palette knife, which I have been loving to do. Now I'm using some liquid acrylics. These are one of my go-to paints, especially using mixed media or when I'm painting over different types of surfaces. So I am using the liquid acrylic in emerald and avocado green. I wanted to keep this page mostly greens, and when doing a whole background, I think keeping to one color really helps it because I already have a lot going on with my stencil and then my chipboard pieces, and this way I can make a nice background where you can still see all of the different elements that I've been adding onto it, but it's not so overwhelming it won't take over the photo. One of my favorite things about using these paints is that you can kind of treat them like watercolor, meaning that you can water it down so it can get really nice thin paint, but then also you can use it straight out of the bottle where it's very pigmented and will cover your surface nicely. So I'm using a combination of those 2 techniques where more on top of the chipboard pieces, I'm keeping the paint fuller and thicker, and then as I move out, I add more and more water to my brush as I paint to leave more like a watercolor effect that gets lighter and lighter. I also love that you can dab up paint, so before it dries, it's still really workable, and then after it dries, it becomes permanent. Here's where the sparkle part of this challenge comes in. I am using metallic flakes and gilding glue. These, I think, look really nice with raised surfaces, so it either will look really nice on top of chipboard pieces like what I'm using here, or even if I had used just texture paste, it really wraps around each edge and I think makes a really cool effect. And also this stuff is very shiny. I'm using the copper. I think it looks really nice with the greens. And how you use this stuff is you add the gilding glue and then wait for it to dry. And when it's dry, it is still a little tacky. You know it's dry because it'll be clear rather than more of a white. So after it's all dry, you add the flakes on top of it and then you brush them off with a brush. First I was brushing them off with a really soft brush, but then to get into more of the crevices of these chipboard pieces, I needed a firmer brush, so I'm using a stencil brush. Typically when I use this, all I need is the soft brush, but just because there are some firmer edges, the stencil brush really came in handy. Now I'm going back in with more of the liquid acrylic paint and painting over some of the areas of metallic flakes. The metallic flakes are very shiny and can be a little overwhelming, but that's why I decided to go over them again. I love the look of the jewel effect paste, and I really wanted to add it to this layout because it's another shiny thing to go with this challenge. And I thought that some black on this page would look nice. So I thought maybe over a dotted stencil would look good. So I tried the first stencil, but the dots were too big. Then I found this stencil, and I didn't really like how that ended up looking either. But as you saw with the first stencil where I got it wet and then wiped it off, it's like an acrylic paint, so before it's dry, you can still wipe it up. So I did that, but I didn't like this one either. So as you can see, I started wiping it up, but then I noticed how the paste pieces were just like sticking inside of the crevices, and I really liked how that made it look. It just added a bit of darkness and a bit of shadow. This paste, it feels like there's little pieces of sand stuck in it, so it's very thick, but I watered it down a little bit and added it around all of the deeper pieces and crevices in the chipboard pieces, and I really like how that looked and the layering and the depth that it added. So this isn't how this paste is typically used, but I think it really works. If you have a stencil that works with your piece, I recommend just using it as you'd normally would with this paste, as just scrape it over the stencil, and that turns out beautifully as well. Now that I have all of my mixed media background done, it was time to start adding in my photos, and then I started placing these florals around it. These florals are from 49 in Market, and they're the orchid color, which I think worked really well with the photos. So I glued all of those in place. I put some foam, some cherry foam on the back of my photos to pop them up a little bit. And now I am adding some sequins for extra little hint of sparkle on this sparkle themed page. And these are sequins from Sizzix in the rose gold color. I would say I do not like fussy cutting, but thinking about how I'm applying all of these little sequins are probably worse than fussy cutting, but I didn't mind doing this at all, so I can just go forever just gluing individual sequins on. Well, here is my final page. You can see some of the glisten from the metallic flakes and the jewel effect paste and the sequins. I really like how it turned out, and I had a lot of fun making it. I will have the links to all of the other videos in the YouTube hop and the links to the products that I used in the description below. Thanks for watching!